Hello everyone. Welcome back. My name is Sterling and I am the artist and founder behind Cactus Lady Creation. On this channel, I share upcycle DIYs, thrift flips, and nature crafts. In this video, I am sharing a few DIYs that I made to reorganize my art space and give it a little makeover. I believe that it is so important to routinely change my workspace to keep inspired and keep inspiring me to create. I find that giving your space even a little change every once in a while, especially when working from home, can really be all that it takes to freshen up the energy and reignite your motivation. So stay tuned to see a few simple and affordable DIYs. My little setup featured in my last Organize With Me video has been working very well so far, but as always, there are ways to improve it and make it more organized and efficient. This first DIY is actually a great way to organize your embroidery thread, as I have been doing a bit of embroidering lately. I actually got the first part of this idea from Pinterest, as there were a lot of other artists who organized their threads in this way. Originally, the threads were in this plastic baggie, which isn't the best as they do get all tangled up, so now is the time for that to change. First, I gathered and untangled the long threads and put the little bits of thread to the side and made sure not to throw them away, as I am going to be doing a bunch of scrappy crafts soon. Then I just use a wood clothes pin, which you can get for super cheap, and I simply wrapped each embroidery thread around the pin, then held it secure with the pegs. This is such a clever way to make sure that all of your thread doesn't twist or tangle, and also just aesthetically looks very pleasing. Gotta love getting 2 in 1 for sure. It did take a while to sort through each little piece of thread, but was very rewarding to have each bit of thread organized. To utilize your full creative capacity, I think it's so important to be as organized as possible, which may be contrary to popular belief, as creative people tend to have a stigma for being messy. But as creating a mess is definitely a part of the creative process, after the mess is made, it is so important to reorganize and consistently improve your creative space to inspire you to go through the creative process again. After organizing all of these threads, I'm definitely inspired to embroider more. Once all of the embroidery threads were organized, it was time to create a little display to sort them all, making them easy to access. First, I started organizing them all by color so that it's aesthetically pleasing, but also to take inventory of them. Then I grabbed this vintage wine rack that I got during my last thrift haul for $3 and decided that it would be perfect to create a little display. Using some twine, I simply double knotted it to each little rack part to create some hanging lines to hang the clothespin threads to. Then the rack was ready to hang all of my beautiful embroidery threads. I do have to say that it is really motivating to have the embroidery threads displayed in this way, as it makes me want to explore the medium more. If you put your materials away, as they say, out of sight, out of mind, and I know from experience that if the materials are cluttered and tangled and put away, it usually discourages me from wanting to create, because then you have to find things and entangle them, which takes away from the time that you could be using to explore the medium. When the display was finished, this is how it looked. I absolutely loved the way that this turned out, as it was better than I envisioned. The total cost of this display was $13, and it always feels good to upcycle for organizational purposes. It really brightened up my small art corner and adds a bit of eclectic energy to the space. For the next DIY, I wanted to create an easy breezy reverse canvas bulletin board for my walls. So first, I used a stretched canvas that was the size that I wanted my bulletin board to be. Then I used a staple remover to take out the staples in order to remove the canvas fabric. If the staples are super tough to remove, you can also use a craft knife like I did, as we won't be seeing the staples, so it really doesn't matter as long as we remove all of the fabric. Here's the wood frame that we will use, and we'll just set it aside for a moment. Then I grabbed 3 pieces of cardboard scraps from a box that I will tape together using some paper tape in order to make one large piece of cardboard. Next, I grabbed the wood frame, and using a pencil, I drew a guide around the outside of the frame to know where to trim it. Using a craft knife, cutting board, and my ruler, I cut along the lines in order to trim the cardboard down to size. Now the cardboard matches the size of the wood frame, which is perfect, and next I trimmed some fabric to match as well. I love and have so much burlap fabric, so I decided to use it for this project. I like the way that 2 layers looked for this because the burlap is made of woven jute, so you can do this with sheer fabrics, just double them up. Then, using the staple gun, I stapled the fabric to the cardboard by first starting in the middle and then working it to the outer edges. As I stapled, I made sure to pull the cloth taut and was extra careful to not staple all the way down to the table. It would be great to prop up your work while you do this. Once I got to the edge of the first side, I moved to the middle of the opposite side, pulled it taut, and worked it to the edges again. I did the same thing on all sides, starting in the middle and then working the staple gun to the outer edges. I saved the corners for last, and I found this to be the easiest way for me to make sure that the cloth was wrapped around nicely. When I got to the corners, I simply folded and tucked the edges, sort of similar to how you would wrap a Christmas present. Now that the front side is complete, it is time to finish off the back. To do this, I trimmed some cotton fabric to size, then using some fabric fusion, I simply glued the fabric to the back of the cardboard. Next, using some hot glue, it was time to glue our fabric-covered cardboard to the wood frame. If you have Fabri-Tac glue, that would be perfect here. I just ran out and wanted to use what I have, and hot glue worked pretty well. I used 2 small nails to hang it, and this is how it turned out so far. It looks so great, and now I just need some fun tacks to level it up, and I think I have the perfect little DIY for this. First, I reached for my favorite air dry clay, which I have put in the description box along with all of the materials that I used in the DIYs in this video. And I needed the clay to get it ready to work with. Then I grabbed my dowel to use as a rolling pin to roll out the clay flat. I wanted to roll out the clay nice and even, but not too flat for this. And next, I grabbed my alphabet letter stamps and wanted to stamp out a word that could be a mantra to keep me motivated throughout the workday, and I chose the word success. It was, as the painter Pablo Picasso said, "Action is the foundational key to all success." So I thought this was a nice action word. After stamping out the word, I used a bit of copper tubing that I had to cut out circles around each letter, and using a mixture of water and clay, I made some slip to smooth out the edges around each clay letter. Feel free to get creative and use a bottle cap or even your craft knife to do this. You can also use some sharp tools to freehand out some designs for your tacks. Then, using the top of the tacks, I pressed them into the backs of the clay so that the tacks could be later glued to a rounded surface. After letting the clay dry overnight, this is how they looked. Using some triple thick brush on glaze and a sponge brush, I brushed on the glaze to the front and sides of the clay. Then, after letting them dry, I took some tacks with a flat top and hot glued them to the clay. The hot glue worked pretty well. I would just say that it didn't work to glaze the back and use the hot glue as it didn't stick properly. Perhaps with some other type of glue you could do this, but it stuck pretty well when I didn't glaze the clay on the back. But remember that glazing it does keep it from cracking as it does seal it. So maybe you want to paint the clay with an acrylic as well to seal it a bit more. It would also be fun to try this craft with a polymer clay, as it is really simple and fun to customize the tacks. After letting everything dry, this is how it turned out. This project was super easy and definitely under $5 to create an easy bulletin board. I always love a DIY that makes use of cardboard from shipping boxes, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Next, I wanted to give this desk a bit of a makeover as it is looking really sad from all of my crafting done on it over the past year. Instead of buying a new desk, it is super simple to completely change up the look of this one with a little bit of paint. First, I scraped off all of the clay and paint bits and wiped the desk clean to prep it. Then I took some black noir chalk paint and painted a layer of paint on top. I didn't want it to be super even, but to have a weathered look, so I made this paint look a bit splotchy. Then, after letting it dry for about 20 minutes, I used a rag to sort of wipe away at some of the paint to reveal the bottom white surface of the desk. Next, I gave the desk a bit of an extra layer of black chalk paint and wiped it away again. This is how it looks so far with those 2 layers of chalk paint. Then I used the espresso antiquing medium and let it sit on top of the desk for about 20 minutes before wiping it away. But since this desk had a bit of a plastic coating on the top, it didn't really soak in the antiquing medium. If you're trying this at home, I would skip this part. I'm just trying to show you the full process and steps that I took and what I learned along the way. This is how the desk looks so far. After wiping away the antiquing medium, my desk didn't look how I wanted, so I grabbed a sanding block sponge and sanded on some of the corners, and this was closer to the look that I wanted to go for. So I grabbed some milk jug chalk paint and started painting it onto the edges of the desk with a brush to give it another layer of paint. Then after letting it sit for about 10 minutes, I used a rag and wiped the white paint, which sort of blended it into the black paint and made sure the strokes were consistent. I used a sanding block to sand it and add some extra stress, and I didn't bother sealing it because I will be making items on it and assumed I'll just keep touching up the desk. But feel free to seal it with the polyurethane if you want, because chalk paint is very porous. After letting it dry, this is how it looked. I hope you enjoyed these simple and easy DIYs. I know they really made my art space seem even more warm and inviting. If you like this video, please give it a like. Subscribe to this channel to see more upcycled DIYs. If you try any of these DIYs and post them online, please tag me in them, as I'd love to see. As always, thank you for watching.